Leviticus Numbers, what do you say?
I'll say anything. No, I won't say anything you want me to, but I'll say something. You want to see if you pick it up, huh? You getting it?
Mm-hmm.
And you?
Loud and clear.
Deuteronomy.
Okay, how you doing?
Just let them talk a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not going to say much I mean,
I'll ask you a
I'm
question.
waiting on your question.
I'll ask you your questions and then you can talk.
Okay, fire away.
But just keep talking, you see, it's fine.
Can you move the monitor just a drop so I can see it?
Sure.
You may ask me some questions and I can't give you one
right,
bit of an answer.
Then if you don't know, just say, I don't know.
Okay.
That's, Joe was saying some of that this morning.
Be some things that I don't
Yeah,
remember
okay.
clear.
Sure. No.
Speak.
Okay. Tell me when you were born and when you started working in the mill.
Well, I was born 1906, November 1st, 1906, and I started working the mill at 14 years of age. And I worked, I don't remember just how many years of it. And then I started work outside. I helped haul brick and stack them to build the front of the old Chronicle mill. That's where I was working. And I wasn't used to handling brick. And I wore the skin off my fingers, and I had to make me a half glove and mitten out of old inner tube. And also, when I was catching brick, I couldn't catch over 4 or 6 without pinching my fingers. And I was working with some boys, colored boys, that had been working in the brickyard, and they could beat me all to pieces on that. So I started helping unload them out of a boxcar, slide them down a chute, and let them stack them on the wagon, bring them, and the wagon wasn't a truck. Bring them around to the front. And then I get out there and help them stack them. And I was no good at pushing them up a ramp to take up to the mason. But I did work there some, but not too long. It was too much for me.
Who was the superintendent then? Who was the owner?
The superintendent, Mr. Irv Maynard, and that was and is still a stow mill. Unless they've sold it recently, they've sold some of them. 2 of the stow boys, the old man Bob Stow's 2 grandsons bought the old Eagle Mill, which did belong to Jim Stowe, their granddad's brother. They bought it and shut it down, and I think now they've sold it to Parkdale, haven't they? I'm not sure about that.
Now, did you know those people personally?
I knew Maynard. I knew. I wasn't associated with either one of the Stows. I knew Bob Stowe Jr. very well, and he's a pretty nice fellow. And Mr. Maynard, superintendent of the old Chronicle mill, I knew him well. I was well acquainted with especially one of his sons, Torrance, and I don't think I need to tell what I started to tell then.
Why not?
Well, he and Torrance, his son Torrance and me, with two other boys, decided we was going to go on a hobo trip. And then Miss Maynard caught him getting ready, and she stopped that right away. But I went home, put on a suit of clothes, and put my old overalls and another old jacket over it, keep my mother from seeing that. And there's two of the other fellows failed in some way, and that tore up my hobo trip. And I'm glad it did, because later I caught a freight train, and it slung me loose from it, and I fell on the end of the ties, and just happened to roll away from it. But there's an old fellow standing up on the bank looking at me. He told me when I got up, he said, I'd already turned my back. Said, I knew you'd going to get cut all to pieces. Now, don't you ever do that no more. And I had no business to. I wasn't going anywhere. I've done a lot of foolish things.
Now, you said, tell us about the first time you knew Joe Lineberger.
Well, that was when we came to, my dad moved into Belmont in 1917, and after I started school, I got acquainted with Joe. He was in grammar school.
Now, who was Joe?
Joe Lineberger. That's who you said you were. Yeah, Joe Lineberger.
Now, who was he?
Who was he? That's A.C.'s son. A.C.'s youngest son.
And A.C. owned the mill.
A.C. and the Stows owned all the mills in Belmont. They finally split up, and each one took different mills.
But then you went to school with the son of the owner.
Well, I went to school the same for 1 or 2 years in the same school, but to be honest with you, when we got out at recess dinner, we played with the poor class. Joe played with the wealthy ones, and I just knew Joe in school. I wasn't. He couldn't say that I was his friend. I wasn't his enemy. I didn't associate with him enough to be friends. He was there was very few of the wealthy ones that associated with us from the poor class. And if you want to know how I feel about it, I thank God for it, because I might have been, I don't know, I might have not been as merciful toward a man down and out. I'm glad for learning to show mercy and show respect regardless of that man's condition financially, because I've never been above the poverty level.
Now, tell us when your family first knew about unions.
About the union? That was about 1919 and 20. That's when my dad and 3 families had to leave Belmont. Well, they didn't have to leave Belmont, but they had to get work somewhere. And the old fella B.T. Bumgar, we were at the Majestic at that time. The Smiths were at the Majestic, and Penningtons were at Majestic. And then there was two Page girls. They went down with us and boarded with in our family. I mean, they lived with our family while they were down there.
No, look, we want to go back because I didn't know whether they had to leave the mill or not. So could you start talking about that and mention that your three brothers joined the Union, your father didn't join the Union, but they all had to leave town. Just tell us that story.
The old man B.T. Bumgar was superintendent, and he was firing them as fast as he found out they'd joined the Union. So I had three brothers, three adult brothers working there, and one sister that was old enough. She had started working there, and my dad was working there, and the old man B.T. fired my three brothers. My dad and my sister quit, and the other ones, these other two families I mentioned, they had some that had joined the Union, so they had to get out and get employment somewhere else. And so they all three of these families found work in Winsboro, South Carolina. And so we had three families packed their things in a boxcar and moved them down there, and we went on the train. We beat our furniture there, so we had to stay in an old hotel that they were remodeling part of it, and it was a mess. We the adult boys and girls, they had a lot of fun that night, but I was too young. I had to behave myself, and it's good that I did. Anyway, I'll tell you a little something funny about it. There was an old fellow living there. He was staying there permanently, and these young three families, the younger adults, they were up way into the night because they knew they didn't have to get up next morning early and go to work, and they were having their fun and making too much noise. I guess that's the reason the old fellow, we see him leaving the next morning with a guitar and his suitcase. He would leave it out for good. And then we all went down to a little restaurant beside the hotel, and the three families went in there with the ones, few stragglers and other families that was with us, went in there at one time to eat breakfast. I guess people on that thought, well, our business picked up, but it didn't last but just that one day. Our furniture come the next day. Well, I think it got there that late that evening, and we got moved into the houses down there at the old Winsboro Mill. Myra, there's where I seen some of the biggest frogs you ever seen. They had a mill pond around the side of that mill, plus one down below it.
Now, how did your family feel about having to leave town because they got fired?
Because of the Union. Well, they didn't like it very much, but we didn't stay down there but about 5 weeks and moved back into they had, I would say, about halfway, well, a little better than that, recognized the Union in North Charlotte. Well, over all the mills are making in Charlotte, but we moved to North Charlotte, and they, of course, come and checked on us, checked on the older ones, see if they were Union people. And they found out that we had to leave Belmont on account of joining the Union, and they welcomed us. But like I said to you before, one mistake I think that they made in organizing union down here was they put too many little what I call smart alecks in as some little officer, and they thought if they joined the union it was time to strike, regardless of how well you was getting along with the company or even about your wages. They thought it was time to strike. Some of them did, and they didn't all that way, but some of the little officers, and they kept up trouble. I think that the union would probably made a go of it back then, at this time, if it hadn't been like that. And then, of course, there was attempt to organize two times after that.
Tell us the first time.
I'm telling you about
Okay.
the first time.
Okay. Tell us then the second time.
What year was the first time? He didn't mention
Oh,
it.
yes, he did. He said it was 1919.
Did he?
1919 and 20. 20. I was just that was before I was about maybe 12. I born in 1906, and at 1912 I would have been 10.
No, 6. You were about 14, 1919, 1920. That would have made you about 14.
Yeah, I suppose I was. But you see, the old man, I'm done getting so old now I can't count my age.
Well, tell us about the second time now.
Well, that was when a fella by the name of Beale, no relation to old Albert, as I know of, they were organizing mostly in Gastonia, but it was spreading into these other, like this little town of Stanley and on down into Belmont, Mount Holly. And it was different from I know I went to one of their open air meetings one night. I had no intention of joining because I didn't even have a job at that time, and I had no reason.
Excuse me, we just stopped.
Hmm?
I just lost sound. We're gonna have to tell that story. Let me
Second
get
time.
set up before
Okay,
you tell me.
okay.
Wait. I'm hearing something funny.
You getting it?
Okay, start by saying in 1929, and then tell about the organization. Okay.
Well, you know, in 1929 is when a lot of the banks they closed. Just after that, the Depression really started around 1929. But this, the union I had started talking about when they were working on the old lorry. That was in the early 30s. And I went Myra meeting, and they asked me to join, and I didn't because, fact is, I was broke. I had 25 cents in my pocket, and I didn't have no reason to join. I wasn't working and needed one of the mills, and I told them that. They said, well, they'd take me, give me membership for that 25 cents. They did. I gave it to them. They gave me a book, and I read the book, and I seen stuff in it that I didn't want, didn't agree with. And my mother, she cooked on an old wood burning stove, and that book made good kindling. I put that in there, and started a fire with it. It made better kindling than it did sense.
What didn't you like about it?
It was communist all the way through. It wasn't. In fact, I can't confirm this, but I heard that old Bill, after he failed in this organizing union, they worked harder at the old Low-Ray Mill than any other place I know of. I would like to be able to remember the old sheriff that got killed.
Idaho.
Idaho. I said I thought that was Idaho, but I was afraid to be sure. Idaho. I remember. I don't remember for sure that there's anyone else killed up there, but he did. He got killed. Well, they failed in that union, and I heard, and as I said, I can't confirm it, but I heard that Bill, the outstanding organizer, he left the country and went to Russia. But not too long, I don't know, a year or two, maybe 3, I don't know, don't remember. But I heard that he come back, and I heard that he said he'd rather be in prison over here than to be on the streets free over there. And I can imagine that. That's about right. At that time, especially.
Was there a lot of talk about that around in Belmont?
Yeah. Among little fellows like me that didn't know much about it, we talked about it a lot, and we blew that up. And I remember then. Now, I don't remember too much more about that union. It failed. But it reminds me of something else I heard the next time it was trying to organize. There's an old feller, he came, I hate to start talking about somebody that can't remember the name. But he was an old fella, came here from the First World War. He lived in California, but he was stationed in Camp Green over here near Charlotte before he shipped over. And he got acquainted with a girl here in Belmont. Not here, but in Belmont. He got acquainted with a girl there. When they discharged him on the West Coast in his own state, I don't know what, I never heard him say it. We called him Old California. That's what we called him. He'd walk you to death. He tall, and he walked too. I mean, everywhere he went, man, now he walked. But they discharged him in his home state, and they tell me he didn't even go home. He got come plumb across the states and married this girl that he got acquainted with. Old man Glenn's daughter. The old man Glenn.
Was something special about Gastonia girls or Belmont girls?
Yeah. But I'm a Hardin, and I got a girl from Hardin. I did. They got some of them guy there said, "You Ray brought up in Hardin, and got married to a Hardin." That's a little old cotton mill settlement up here on the old South Fork River, and she was raised up there, and they moved to Belmont. Me and her got acquainted, and finally got married. I told her I was 30 years old before I married, and she was about 27, I believe. I told her we was both old enough to have better sense. I didn't have to put that in there, but she knew it. I was joking. She could take a joke as well as me. But getting back now to this old feller, California. He was over here when they was trying to organize a union, and Bill was trying to organize a union, and he heard us all talking about it. We'd found out it was communist, and he got to fighting this union then, and all up in the last time at that, and he called them Rush. He didn't say Russian. He'd say Russian Reds, Red Russia. He'd holler at them when I told you about the what they call flying squads going from under. He'd see them marching. He'd holler, Russian Red, Red Russian. But I'd get tickled that old man hollering. So he didn't join the union, but there was some fellers that fought the union in the wrong way, and they fought it for no reason that I could see except to gain prestige with the employers. I know one that fought in front of Net Product. He had a fist fight down there, and he just, I didn't see it, but they said he whipped this old fella. The old fella was for the union, and it was Grumhovas fighting. I said Grub, it was his nickname, so anybody that was a fool about Grub won't know that I was talking about Roy.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll just go ahead and tell you,
Okay.
Roy over. He wound up being an overseer, and I don't think he was working at that product then, because I never knew him to work anywhere except in a yarn mill. And down there they had trouble. I mean, they had some pretty serious trouble. And I come out and having some serious trouble down there. I was straddled the fence. I wasn't for or against, because I wasn't working in any of the plants. But there was a group out in front. That's when they had the National Guard out there. And I walked by Greer's dry cleaning, and I passed there. I seen one of the guards. He was watching me, and I didn't know. I just walked on. I was going down there and talk with him. But when I passed the front of Greer's laundry and dry cleaning, he started meeting me. And before he got to me, he says, "Going back up there." I said, "Oh, I'm just coming down to talk." He says, "Get on back." And he says, "You're not supposed to pass Greer's door." He says, "You can come there, but don't come on down here." There'd been some going down there and causing trouble. And some right across the street in the old Majestic houses who was still standing there. And some of them get on the porches over there and hackle the guard. They got the guard. It was aggravating to them. But they didn't have no right to run one back across the street and follow him. They had fixed minutes on the rifle. They didn't have no right to follow him back across there, run him in the house, and stab him. They did that to one, and he bled to death. And
Excuse me. There's a train in the background.
To it. That's beautiful.
Okay. Well, he finished his story.
Yeah.
And I got a crackle, and I
Okay.
heard a big train. If you
Okay.
wanted to tell the story again, no,
Okay.
it's still whistling. I hear it.
Okay. But I
It's atmosphere, Judy.
that's beautiful.
We're in the country.
Mm.
It's not that bad.
But thanks for the telling about
Yeah.
the crackle. That's important.
I'm
Okay.
not giving you the information.
No, I can tell that since y'all been up here, he's remembered more
Sure.
little things happening.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. You
Like
want to
what?
tell that story again? Jen? Just tell us the whole story again and see how it works.
Oh, about the trouble down there in
Yeah.
East Belmont.
Belmont. Yeah.
Well, like I said, they chased it. I don't know whether the boy had crossed the street and they run him plumb back across, but he run into one of them old big two-story houses used to stand there, and he followed him inside the door and stabbed him. That was going too far. And one of my sister-in-laws was about to get it down there. She pretty bad to haggle anybody over a thing like that. And one of them punched her a little bit. My brother said, "I thought sure they was going to stab it in her," but they didn't. There was some of the guards that wasn't fired. It's just like anything else. You find a bad apple sometime here and there. One policeman can make the whole force look bad. One church member can make the whole church look bad. One member of a family can make the whole family look bad. And that's the way it works that way in any organization. I think that some of the servicemen has made America look very poor in some of the countries overseas. I'm sorry to say that we got some fine people. I know it, but there's some that don't seem to care, just so they get by with their fun or their desires or whatever.
Now,
But
did you, after that, did you ever have any dealings with the union? A union?
no, never knew. I can imagine that if they'd have tried to organize in some of the places I worked, I would have joined the union. But they never, anywhere I was working, they never tried to organize. I've worked for some people that if they would have tried to organize and would have organized, I'd have been like some of the crazy ones. I'd have wanted to strike right then, because they done had me before the union was organized. I can remember when I worked at Cramerton. The old man Kramer was a fine. He owned it. He didn't own that mill. That's that mill. He owned them two little mountains. He owned a great tract on the side of the South Fork River toward Belmont. He even put in a sewer system over there. It was going to build a mill over there. There's one over there now, but he didn't build it. His two sons sold out after he died, and the company built over there. And then they shut down Cramerton and tore down that old yarn mill was built down, and they went up there to the.
Crackles, I'm sorry. I think you're sitting on this. I'm just getting all sorts of stuff.
No, he's not.
I'm not sitting on it.
It doesn't matter. I'm getting
Yeah,
stuff.
okay,
So
okay. Can you figure out where it's coming from?
How about your arms are tired?
no, sir, my arms are just fine. I'm still getting.
No problem.
Okay. Tell me about the flu epidemic.
Oh, let's see, that was in 1918. Let me see now how many were still at home, hadn't married, in my dad and mother's family. There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of us still there when that started.
I'm sorry, we have to start over again because I want you to say the flu epidemic.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're talking about the first time the flu epidemic hit this country. And it was carried, I was made to understand that it was carried here from, it seemed that most of medical profession believed it came from the old battlefields where there was people buried and then blown up at shells, and they said they believe that started it, and it come over and spread. It was killing people. I mean, it was killing. I don't know whether y'all remember or not, but they used to. Didn't have funeral homes. What I expect you maybe have heard a better word for it than this, but when a person died at home, they would call, when they prepared them for burial, they called it washing. They'd bathe them and lay them out and get the casket. The casket would come in a old plain blank box, and the casket was placed in that like a casket's placed in a vault now, and before that, they tell me there was some of the graves dug down to a certain level, and then there was a vault dug in there to fit that casket. And the caskets used to come up like this, and then taper off to the foot. They'd dig a vault to fit that. But in my day, they was done using the wood box. And that's one reason that a lot of the graves sank in a few years after. That box would rot, and it would drop to the casket, and it'd have to fill in because it sunk that much. But anyway, there was times when you could pass during the flu epidemic. There's times you pass a house where there was one had died from it, and there'd be as much as 3 boxes at one house. You knew there was 3 corpses there because they have a box for every corpse, and there was many of them. And there was, I thank God that there was not one but at my dad's house, and we were a big family.
How many of you were there?
How many were there then? There wasn't but Dad and Mother, John, my oldest brother. No, John was married. Plato and Cicero, the twins, they were there, and Jim, me, Rob and Aaron, and 2 sisters.
For what size house?
What size house were we in? A great big 5-room house. 5 rooms, all them in. That's the truth. We were poor. We were dirt poor. But we had something to eat every day. Had some clothes, not fine. Had shoes on my feet, and the cold weather come, but I didn't want to wear them. They had to make me put my shoes on, and they had to watch me in springtime. I'd start barefooted before time. I reckon that's the reason I got such a big old broad foot. And it looks like I might have waded in the mud a lot, Mr. President. They don't used to go into all that, but I'm just crazy like that. Anyway, going back to the flu epidemic, it was a family up there at the climax. We were living there then. The family up there, I don't know why they did it, but one of the boys and the dad died, and there was a young girl. I mean, she was just a child, and they didn't tell that child her dad was dead. They told her he was gone, and I think he went so far as to tell her he'd be back. But they had her believing that he was back. They let that child grow up thinking that her dad was still living and he'd be back someday. Why they did it, I don't know. I don't see why it'd be any harm to let a child know that someone's dead when they're going to soon learn that they're going to die one of these days. And that just didn't make sense to me. That didn't make sense to me when I was a boy.
Could you're telling me something about Mr. Lineberger and the flu epidemic.
Oh, you can meet Mr. Lineberger on the street. He wouldn't stop and talk to you. He might have some of his close acquaintance, but he'd be walking along with his handkerchief over his mouth and nose. He breathed through that handkerchief. They thought that the air was full of flu germ, and it must have been, because there's a lot of people going down with it. But you know, I didn't have it. Everyone in the family had it but me. Not at one time. I remember all 3 of my brothers had it, Dad and Mother had it, and the two daughters, they had it, and the two boys younger than me had it. And I walked about three and a half, maybe 3.5, I think, miles in the evening twice a week. We bought milk from a old fellow lived over behind Belmont Abbey. He was a farmer. I'd go over there, take my bucket. Mother would give me a bucket with a cloth. And I'd go over there and get 2 gallons of milk and 2 presses of butter. We bought buttermilk. I get 2 presses of butter. And Miss Stowe was a fellow. She'd put that in there and tie a cloth around it. That helped keep me from getting trash in it carried home. Well, me and my next brother next to me, younger, we go over and they had kids of their own, and we play with them. And the flu got so bad, Miss Stowe told us one day, said, I don't mind you all playing with my children, but said the flu's so bad, said I'm afraid it's spread. She knew it, there was a lot of it on the Climax Village. Well, we did have sense enough to understand, because we'd
Sorry,
been
I just got it again.
not getting it now.
No, I'm doing it again.
That's hardwiring then. 'Cause it's
Tommy, you can watch him on TV down right down there. You can watch him on TV right down there.
Okay, we get speed.
Okay. Tell me about the flu epidemic and the fellow who was head of the mill.
About the flu epidemic and what?
And how it was taken by the people around the mill.
Oh, well, I told you that everyone in our family that was at home had the flu, then except me. They didn't all have it at one time. But I remember after my 3 oldest brothers that was at home at that time, they went back to work. We were living on the Climax, but they had left there and went to work in the old Chronicle mill. My dad and my sister held a house there at the Climax. So the mill stopped off 1 hour for dinner, and then they'd go back, start up at 1 o'clock, and work the rest of the afternoon till 6. They was working 11 hours a day and 12 hours at night. So 3 brothers come home one day for dinner, and I was laying across the foot of one of the beds. Didn't feel good, and it done been through the rest of the family, the flu had, and they said, well, he finally got it. And they come home that evening, and I was out in the yard playing, and they said, no, they made a mistake. I was too mean to take it. But I never did until I was a grown man. I don't remember having the flu before I was married. And I was an old man when I got married, 30 years old.
You said something about being as good looking as you could be.
Looking at what? What?
Being as good looking as you could be.
Oh. That don't belong in this flu.
No.
What did you say about it?
That's well, if you try to do something, try your best to do something, and you can't do it, well, you say, that's the best I can do, don't you? Well, I've tried my best to look better, and I can't, so I'm pretty as I can be, ain't I? Well, talking about the flu now, that it was really killing people. Anybody tells you it was bad, you can believe them. It was bad, and not only in Belmont, not only in North Carolina, but over the whole country. That spread. It spreaded faster than AIDS has. This, but there was some cure found for it, but it was killing a lot of people before they got anything. Before they found just how to treat it. And like I said, there was, you know how the caskets came in. They came in them boxes, and I've seen as high as 3 boxes either on the porch or beside the house at one time. And lots of times, 2. I've seen that in Belmont, down the mill village where we were living. But they finally got a cure for it, and got it down to where of course it was rough when I had it. I had never had it before. I had a little touch of flu, I think, since I've been here, staying with Myra and Tommy. But nothing like they had it back then.
Well, now, back then, we were talking about the Union in 34. There was some of them that was pretty well organized. I wonder if you would read a document that we found in the archives from a local union.
We, the members of Local Number 1273, United Textile Workers of America, make the following resolutions. First, that the China Grove Cotton Mills Company recognize the body as an organization of workers.
Did you know that China Grove had a union at that time?
Yeah, but